rights-based program, and I think I would much rather see that many more programs like that become rights-based. But I think the self-congratulatory note that the government tends to take is probably premature. And the reason is this, that though there were huge opportunities and there was a huge amount of political mandate, a lot of it was frittered away. Many of us who were involved right from the beginning in pushing for this and trying to help little bits and pieces of designing. One of the weakest parts of this program has been the monitoring of the program. Now you must look at the program at least two components. One is to provide employment and the other is to create assets. You see now, and therefore I feel that whereas yes, insofar as it's succeeded, it's done wonders. It's a good idea, should be. But I feel we have lagged far behind and much behind what we should have as far as monitoring. This is the first part. The second part of it, which is assets creation, is another problem.
Right. In fact, we'll come to asset creation because even Jairam Ramesh has criticized NREGA's scheme, saying that it should focus more on skilled employment, and because we are not creating durable assets, that remains a huge challenge as far as the implementation of MNREGA is concerned. But the whole expectation from this program of having a participatory and a bottom-up program, do you really feel that MGNREGA has succeeded on that front, and it has in fact become very participatory? The role of Panchayati Raj institutions at the helm of affairs, they have contributed.
Well, I think first on the positive side, the fact that we have created a model, this is an international model now, a rights-based employment generation program, which almost every country is wanting to emulate in its own, every country which has similar problems, Indonesia, South Africa, Brazil, all across the major continents. And that is, I think, a huge, fillip in terms of what India has been able to show to the rest of the world. It's really a flagship program internationally, and Advani Sahab recognizes that.
Macro level, the responsibility of the states, the onus is on the states to really contribute. But why is it that, in local areas, it has not really succeeded? But coming to you, Mr. Mudgal, we're talking about the implementation of MGNREGA, and implementation remains a huge challenge. Monitoring remains a huge challenge. But this whole approach, participatory approach, it has created indeed, a remarkable, a model, for other countries also to see and emulate. But the architecture, the way it is being implemented remains a huge challenge?
No, I think the architecture is quite okay. The problem is that all the enemies of NREGA have got together. At the local level, there's local bureaucracy. There are the elected sarpanches, surprise, surprise. All the elected sarpanches, elected MLAs, and even other elected representatives are actually plotting against it, because they believe that somehow, if this social audit becomes a reality and there is a kind of public hearing thrown into every work, like public hearing and social audit of primary health centers, of all other, governance structures.
Why the demand for this work has gone down, and also the funding, the allocation for this program has gone down. It's now time for me to take a short break. Next we come back, we'll ask these questions. Stay tuned. Discussing the implementation of the Rural Employment Scheme, MNREGA. So the big question is how far this project, this scheme has enhanced livelihood security of people living in rural areas. Coming back to you, Dr. Jha, the demand for work has gone down and also the allocation has gone down. What reasons would you cite for this?
No, I think I'll come to that in a minute, but let's complete what we were discussing in the first part of the program, which is how is it that we need to change, what needs to be changed in the program. And Vipul spoke about people's representatives, the Panchayati Raj representatives, and the word enemy I am a bit uncomfortable with, and I know Vipul is a great advocate of decentralization, so he would agree with what I'm saying. I think the key to the success of NREGA is the success of the Panchayati Raj institutions. Because it's not just a program for livelihoods, it's not just a program for employment, it is essentially a program for strengthening democracy at the grassroots.
Welcome back. You are watching Public Forum. In this edition, we are discussing the implementation of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. If you have any questions, join us live on our program. Call us on our toll-free number 1800115313. Can deny MNREGA is having an impact. Wages are rising, migration is slowing down, also caste equations are changing. Coming to you, Mr. Mudgal, you just heard Professor Srivastava, your response.
No, I basically, I'm saying that, it's not I mean, you don't see it as an economist or you don't see it as a public administration expert. You see it as a scheme of grassroots democracy. I mean, according to me, this is a scheme, it's a rough guide to democracy in India. Wherever NREGA is working, financial inclusion is happening. You have 11 crore people who become account holders in post offices and in banks, and so much is being said about Aadhaar card and you'll get a bank card, no frill card, that's all nonsense. I mean, if you can have financial inclusion of 11 crore people in 3 years' time, I think it's a great scheme there. My disagreement with Professor Srivastava is that decentralization of corruption is actually, forget, there is another man who's lost the election and he's there to hold the Gram Sabha, and that is where my answer to Shekhar also comes. Not techno-managerial, but it is also, if you Gram Sabha, I think the entire Panchayati Raj system will start functioning. If we start holding Gram Sabhas properly, then the public hearings will happen, social audits will happen, right questions.
Right. I have a caller with me right now from Maharashtra. Yes, sir, please ask your question.
Thank you. I am J.N. Rao from Maharashtra. My question is directed to Professor Srivastava and Mr. Shah. Can the Mahatma Gandhi NG Employment Guarantee Agency effect of India reduce the economic disparities and purchase of powers between the rich and the poor in India? How does international agencies like United Nations and Food and Agricultural Organization look at that? My second question in short is, don't you think the MGNREGA effect will be really successful only if the present day existent work culture in offices change in all the parameters involved like cost of living, proper audit, etc. will take place?
Thank you so much, Mr. Rao. I'll first take Professor Srivastava's response.
Why don't you invite?
I'm sorry. We're getting a bad audio. Maybe we'll come back to your question. It's now time for me to take a short break. Next, when we come back, in our final segment, we'll ask our panelists what's the road ahead, and as far as NREGA 2.0 will soon be implemented. What is it that will be changing in the implementation of the scheme? Stay tuned.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Please
The panel?
Please ask your question.
Ma'am, I have a question. Like, most of the people who are employed in this particular area are illiterate, and secondly, they are poor. So in both these senses, they don't have the information. They can't access the information which the government publishes mostly in newspapers and even in this particular channel we are seeing right now. But they don't have what is that the government is doing to get the information to those people who are poor, and then they are also illiterate.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Shah, you'd like to respond.
No, I think it's a very important question. I think one of the major changes that we are bringing about in NREGA 2.0 is precisely creating awareness about this program, and that is through a cadre of social mobilizers. As I was responding to Shekhar off the record in the break, the point is it is not only techno-managerial support. There will be support for social mobilization, for strengthening the holding of Gram Sabhas, where people become aware of the procedures. There are procedures in the Act. You have to have an application for work. It's not something, as the caller rightly said, people were fully aware of. And I think we need to do much more dedicated human resources who will make this possible. And we are, improving the systems by which people will be able to apply for work through multiple channels. Through SAG members, through the Anganwadi worker, what we are doing is a number of things to correct this major anomaly. Firstly, the fact that there is a whole problem of the density of banking and post office institutions in the remote tribal areas of this country. We moved from cash payments because there was huge corruption there to a more transparent system of bank accounts. But the fact is, people going to the banks are under-resourced.
And also details on wage payments
exactly.
as well.
So state after state is being encouraged and facilitated to move in that direction.
Okay, I have a caller with me now. Please ask your question.
Yeah. So I want to give a reference here of China, a comparison of China and India. In China, Deng Xiaoping told that we have to move people out of villages to the factories to make our national industrialized. And this was given the fact that agriculture is the one which contributes the least to in terms of economic developments, like agriculture, then industrialization, then services. this is the hierarchy. I know you understand well. So why we are making a program like NREGA to compete with the industrialization? Because if people get higher wages in NREGA, they compete with the industrialization process. A very good example of this is Rajasthan, where people are sitting, I won't say sitting idle, but they are doing very less job and getting high payments in NREGA instead of working for, say, a solar plant or something where they can contribute something to the industry.
Okay.
So now there is a competition between the two.
Okay.
How can
I'll
you
take
justify agriculture?
Mr. Mudgal, you want to respond?
It's a comment more than a question, but my small point is that there is forced migration, there is distress migration in India. Now, there is nothing wrong in people moving to the cities, to the urban centers in search of work and finding work, even if they are living in the slums. If they have work, it's a good picture. But the whole problem is with distress migration. When people have to take the entire family and move because they don't have enough to eat, then the problem comes. And that is what NREGA is doing. It is basically working on extreme rural.
It is a very sensible issue. Really, in the long term, medium term, we have to create decent jobs outside agriculture. And the fact is that industry is not doing that at present, which is why you have the kind of situation people describe, distress livelihoods, distress migration, and which is why we need a program like NREGA. It does other things as well.
Stay in agriculture because it is providing mechanisms where
it needs to.
At a time when you're trying to implement right to food, if there's no agriculture, how can you actually implement right to food?
So we need to move on both legs.
True. Last 5 minutes on the program. I'll take final comments. I'll start with you, Mr. Mudgal. A very ambitious program. The government is very hopeful, and the opposition also looks very enthusiastic about it, considering Mr. Advani's remark in the UN General Assembly. At this stage, how are you rating this, and what more needs to be done?
No, I think a lot needs to be done. I think a lot of other grassroots democratic issues have to be tackled. There has to be decentralization, decent and well-intentioned decentralization of power, of administration, devolution of political power, and it all has to converge at the district level. And that will strengthen NREGA, and NREGA will strengthen the rest of it. Social audits have to be conducted. There has to be a system of rating of public services.
Right. Final comments from you, Professor
Well,
Srivastava.
we need to recognize that there are different stakeholders in the process of implementation of NREGA. If they move in the same direction, NREGA, their empowerment, their social mobilization is the key to long-term success. But
involved in the implementation of this program have to work positively and contribute positively rather than actually getting themselves embroiled in several other activities. Final comments from you, Mr. Singh.
Well, very quickly, I would say that I welcome the fact that MGNREGA 02 is going to have much greater efforts at monitoring. But let me then say that just catching the bad guys is not enough. You'll have permission to commission very quickly a very comprehensive study so that we can actually have the discussions based on solid facts.
Right.
So just responding to the last point which Shekhar made, the good news for everyone is that the Planning Commission is just about to launch the largest ever evaluation of the NREGA. It includes all the major research institutions of the country. There's been a whole process of how they've been selected, and over the next 1 year, we are going to do exactly what Shekhar has said, because we absolutely accept that is very important. I would just take a different view. I would say prevention is better than cure. I would emphasize, of course, the monitoring and the redressal, etc., is very important. But the hope that we have from NREGA 2.0 is that we will improve the way it functions, and in 5 different respects. First, strengthening its demand-driven character. Secondly, building the capacities of the Panchayati Raj institutions, which are the major implementing agency. Third, therefore, improving the quality of assets and its productivity enhancing dimensions. Fourth, improving efficiency in the way it functions by reducing delays. Mechanisms of using technology to prevent corruption rather than catching it after it.
Right, and when we talk about decentralization, also devolution of funds, which remain a huge challenge. Hopefully, after MGNREGA 2.0, devolution of funds will not be a very big challenge. As you rightly said, maintenance of assets is also a very big issue. Rather than creating, you also need to maintain those assets. Completely out of time. Thank you so much for joining us in this program. It was a pleasure having all of you here, and that's all we have for you in this edition of Public Forum. Thanks so much for watching.